there's this awakeness, sulfur. So sulfur represents being awake, salt represents being asleep, and also that this primer materia, what does that come from? Right, now we're getting into the black light, right? So the primer materia, if that's the black sun, where does that emanate from? And that emanates from elsewhere, which is probably the plane of the mentalism. So the mentalism plane is, I think, what we're sort of talking about with the black light, as opposed to the primer materia, which is all of the occult forces and potentials. We have our brother has joined us. Welcome, dear brother. We have been waiting for you for a while. Lovely that you've been able to join us. I hope your boys have got into bed nice and all. My son had the greatest poo ever. He was bragging to me when I went to make cocoa. Dad, I had the biggest poo ever. I was like, well done, my boy. So yeah, we've got, as I like to call him, Toby-Wan Shinobi. Toby-Wan Shinobi. Come to join us, and he's a researcher. You guys have obviously checked out his channel in our group. You know him. But for those that don't, look in the recommended channels. Indy's channel is there. As soon as Indy starts putting content up, more content, you'll probably see it. He has got some content up. Toby has been putting up a nice amount of content. We're waiting for Cosmic to get his channel on go. He's too much of a perfectionist to actually start the channel, which, Cosmic, it's better to just get started, man. Get cranking. And that's what I think. I think just get cranking. You can even just make voice recordings of what you're saying and just put images on the screen. You could do that with Clipchamp. I don't know if you're using Windows. You could do it with Clipchamp really easily and just make like little videos with images where you're talking. Anyway, welcome, dear Toby. It's an honor to have you on the show with all of us. And do warm up your gab, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Franklin. What's up, guys? It's an honor to be here. I've been listening on and off as much as I can because this is a topic I think we've been building up to for a while. Having our conversations on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or whenever. But I think also this concept of the black sun, the black light, the Ein Sof, is what all of my research has been leading up to, because this is just something that I'm starting to uncover, the connection between all of these. And it even relates to, like, well, when I hear Ein Sof, I just think of inner Soph or inner self. Like that black sun is what's inside of us already. And that's where all things come from. All ideas, like you call it like wisdom, I guess. The inner wisdom. The wisdom comes from the darkness, and that darkness is inside all of us. But most just want to follow the light, understandably. It's easier to see, easier to spot. It's easier to navigate towards the light. Heading towards the black sun, the black light, isn't a path for everyone. But this inner light, this inner black light, is the inner self. It's where our inner self is. It's our core, our innermost seed, which contains everything. And that's why I think it's related to like fearlessness, because it just animates love, this frequency of the blackness, because the white light seems to kind of put on a show. It seems to kind of want your observation, whereas the black light just emits pure love. And that's why I think it's associated with no fear. And it's also what connects everything, this blackness, the thread that we can't see. And it's sometimes called inconceivable, unknowable, because it's not anything which you can like quantify. In my very limited understanding, bearing in mind I've been looking into this for like a few weeks or whatever, and not very heavily, but I just think it's the thread which weaves all things. my intuition tells me it's the liminal. It's the liminal space, the thread which connects all things, and it's beyond time. It's timelessness, and that's why we can't put it into a box, because it's beyond time. It's the light before all creation, if you can even conceive that. But it could be quite difficult to understand if you're a believer in non-existence, like as in before birth and after death. As far as I'm concerned, what happens when we die is the same as what happens when we're born. There's just existence. And that's something that's quite hard for some people to comprehend, that there is just an isness. There is just an energy constantly flowing, constantly transmuting and changing. So I think that, yeah, this topic like we're talking about today is very close to my heart, because it kind of, it's as close, it is the core. That's what I've always tried to find. They're like, over my years of research and looking into things, to not get swept off in the current of this or that, is to find the essence. And I think this is the essence. And it's difficult to talk about, which is great, because there's so many different ways you can kind of look at it as a topic. But I think it's what makes it sort of easier to observe in our mind's eye is to compare it. So I think like the black sun, the Ein Sof, you can compare it to our inner self, our inner wisdom, even Sophia as well. And I think the story of her being trapped for 11,000 years is very interesting, because I'm just gonna say that that whole story is about our individual selves, and then we're not separated from that. That is us being part of the world soul, and that we've been separated from it. We've not been able to acknowledge it, not observe, because you can't see it, you can only feel it, but you can acknowledge it. But we've been kind of led astray, so to speak. So I think it kind of helps to kind of have different kind of lenses to kind of view something, like with things that are difficult to understand, rather than focusing on the one thing. If you focus on a few different things which are similar, the thing which you want to be focusing on will be brought to light, if that makes sense. So yeah, really looking forward to this conversation today.
Yeah, brother.
Oh, Franklin, there's a lot of echo on your end.
That's because I was testing my phone, but I've got a mic next to my head. So never use a mic next to another mic. It's an old musician trick, right? Like make sure that they're pointing like different directions, because it will pick up the electrical interference of the other mic. Yeah, man. You know that's like we broke down the etymology of some of these words beautifully. Unfortunately, we did that like a while ago. So it's quite a ride. It took me a while to articulate it in hieroglyphic sense. But it's really interesting. Like we've also been looking at cosmic system of understanding the universe. I like to call it boxes, just to make the words simple. Do you mind if I call your things boxes, Cosmic?
It makes more sense if you call them balls instead of boxes.
Balls.
Because there is the Fae.
Balls.
Here, you got to think about this though. The Fae have this like thing where it's like they have a kind of an argument with the elves, because the Fae think that it's better to understand the universe with spheres, and the elves think it's better to understand with cubes, and they have their own different theories. The thing about a sphere that's interesting is that it implies a sort of a space that exists around it, whereas I feel like a cube is it's all encompassing. It sort of seems to take around your entire sort of environment, whereas like with the sphere, you recognize a dome, and when you recognize that dome, you recognize something out of it. So that the shape is actually very important to the philosophy itself. But yeah, you're mostly on the right track there, Franklin.
Yeah, the idea of all of these things, and I hope there's no interference now. Does it sound better? Great, because I'm in the kitchen now, and I'll try not to make too much noise. But this idea that we're in this multidimensional field of expansive fractal existence, of spheres made out of spheres made out of spheres made out of spheres that make bigger spheres, and they do that in all directions, multidimensionally, throughout the scale of macro and micro. Though the illusion of macro and micro is, I think, what we're trapped within. That's the dimensional perspective. But the macro and the micro are really possibly just all the same expression through different lenses. That's the way you put it, wasn't it, Cosmic? Different lenses.
You touch on an interesting point here, Franklin, about the macro and micro, because I think the idea, because in Zarfexology is this whole concept of being sort of trapped within the Zarfex, right? That you don't, because of the sort of the Zerfixes or the belief systems that you're into, they kind of prevent that understanding. Well, the other understanding is the false macro and micro. So, for example, what I mean is the false macro of materialism is that space goes out infinitely in all directions, and there's just stars and planets and galaxies extending far out, or whatever. And a lot of people are kind of the reaction are no, that's an illusion, that's a it's a deception, it's a smaller world. I take a different strategy. I'm okay, atheist scientists, you can have your infinite three-dimensional space or whatever. However, my space amount is that infinite three-dimensional space is finite in the higher dimensional space. So imagine space, just blackness in all directions around you. Now imagine that blackness being kind of contained into a singular black ball, and outside of that black ball there's a different color, maybe white or red or green or yellow or whatever. And then once you kind of conceptualize space like that, like a sphere, actually give it a shape. See, that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to think about space from the materialist point of view, because there's no way to make a shape out of it. You can't. So by making space into a higher dimensional sphere, you then can see the true macro, the true expansiveness. But if you don't think without the Zarfex, you get trapped in a false infinity. And that's another thing about why they use the word ozozo to describe infinity, because ozozo is essentially an infinity that exists outside of your conception of infinity. So it's the infinity beyond what you think infinity is. And so if we look at space, it's like a false three-dimensional space. It's think of it like a hamster wheel, right? You see someone from the third dimension perspective. If you're in a spaceship, you're going thousands of miles in a billiard ball. But from a fourth or fifth dimensional perspective, looking at it from a Zerfex, that spaceship is like a hamster in a hamster wheel. It's just sort of flying in place. It's only from the higher dimensionals perspective, it looks like it's stationary. But then from the higher dimensional perspective, you see all of this massive space that exists outside of what we call physical space that you wouldn't know about if you had assumed that the physical kind of mundane space is infinite. So by understanding an infinity outside of infinity, that's another way of sort of dealing with the delusion. So I know a lot of people, they like to go lower than 3 dimensions. I go higher than 3 dimensions to escape the 3D landscape.
But how can you quantify space though?
Yeah,
how can you say space is space? We're in space. There's space around us, space in us. Space is just space.
Well,
you can't say space is
Well, I use Zerfexes, man. But the idea is, it's you can't really quantify space. You're right, but you can quantify dimensional distances between ideas. So, for example, the distance conceptually between red and orange is not as vast as the conceptual distance between red and green. See, with red and orange, there's no difference, but between red and green, you have orange and yellow separating them. So even though these are not really you can't really quantify color, you can still kind of recognize a kind of a quantifiable relationship between things. So Zarfexology is the idea that, so with like physical geometry and distances, you are measuring physical distances with a ruler. But Zarfexology is also about measuring conceptual distance. So if you think about red and yellow, there is no real location in which the general color of red and yellow exist in space-time. You can't quantify them. But by understanding and comparing them with different types of quality, like orange, green, blue, and purple, then you can sort of assess the relationship between those things. And you can kind of have I guess maybe a pseudo quantifiable existence where you can use a little bit of quantification to kind of make sense of your surroundings and the magical relationships between, but not to the extent where you can pretty much like figure out the entire thing at once and like every single atom and matter. So I guess that answers your question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, sort of. Definitely would love to get into that, like, on a further discussion, because I think that, well, I'll just say now, like, people, like, not you, but people will say like, oh, it going to space or out of space and stuff, but they forget that we're in space. Like, space is all around us. It's just the spaces in between. So when you're talking about talking about quantifying, or like there's this space and then that space, or like infinity above infinity, it's like everything is right here. The infinite is right here. There's no kind of extra space outside of this, if that makes sense. It's like, it depends how you're looking at it, really. It's just, I know maybe that's not where you were going, but it did sound like you were kind of like quantifying space, so that's why I had to bring it up, to be devil's advocate, kind of, and just to be like, that space is space. It's like, it's not out there. It's we're in space.
But it's an interesting way to conceptualize it. If you think of space as a sort of a black sphere instead of an infinite continuum, because it's almost like if you can contain that space within a sphere, the idea is you can see and perceive the dimensions that exist outside of it. And so by kind of like condensing it to that level, it gives you a different advantage.
But space wouldn't be the space wouldn't be the shape. It wouldn't be the sphere.
It's kind of abstract, right? So when you think about like the concept of space, because there's physical space, but then there's also kind of emotional space. There's idea space. There's sort of temporal spaces, and Zarfexology is all about different types of spaces. So you think about each Zerfax contains a certain range of space. So that's what I would think of it. It's like a space range. It's not like a specific object that you can like quantify, because within there are Zerfaxes. The idea is there's Zerfaxes within Zerfaxes. So if you think about a room or like one space, that's one Zerfax, but all the little objects within it are sort of like what they call micro Zerfaxes that exist inside that. And it's really just about understanding, relation. It's not about quantification necessarily, because it's merely just about, understanding the relationship between ideas and how they correlate with it. Because you say everything is here, but also, there's certain like musical correspondences that make sense. There's notes and color tones. They have relationships with each other. And by understanding like, how they separate. And you do raise an interesting point, though, with the whole quantification thing, because Zarfexology actually does agree with you in a sense, because the idea is that the paradoxical understanding is that we live in a singular sort of Zarfex, but the Zarfex is not quantifiable. And because when you get to a point of quantifiability, you reach a new threshold of dimensionality. So the idea is that, what makes a Zarfex is that it has an infinite, it exists in a way where the Zerfaxes are just infinitely creating. It creates an infinite threshold within itself. So if you could quantify the number of Zerfaxes within a system, it's not a true Zarfex. That's the idea. And so a Zorfax would then be an infinite number of Zarfaxes. And so the idea is there's a certain point of existence, dimensionally speaking, where quantification no longer makes sense in terms of trying to figure out how things are understandable. Like in this, and if you think about it, quantification is what defines the solidity and physicality of the material realm that we exist in. So that's another point that's one of the things that the idea of quantity and quantification is a unique concept to solid Zarfaxes, the type of Zarfax that we exist in. And that when you get to the upper Zarfaxes, like the fluid Zarfaxes or the gaseous Zarfaxes, then the concept of quantification, in terms of quantifying understanding, is no longer relevant because it's just so hyperdimensionally complex, you can't make sense of it, right? So in a lot of ways, what we call quantification is merely the method and tools we use to understand this specific reality that we exist in materially right now.
Right. So this quantifiable thing, and that's me talking, right? Okay, good. This quantifiable thing of space-time, this is quite an interesting concept, I think. You know, that there is no ability to be able to quantify any of these things, essentially. But I like your idea of a sphere as a concept because it makes me think of a toric field, and that the outer reach of the toric field, the circumference of the toric field, is essentially the center of the toric field, which sort of reflects the idea that the outside is the inside. What do you guys think of that as a concept?
Sorry, my mic was muted then. Yeah, I think that's a great concept. The outside is inside. It's like the black sun is in the center of the earth, potentially, and then it's also in the center of us as well. But also at the same time, that black light is everywhere. Like I just view it as the liminal spaces, the spaces in between things. This is why when quantifying was mentioned, I was a bit like, what do you mean? Because it's like it's the liminal, it's the spaces in between all things, you know. So I think, yeah, the inside is the outside is the inside. It's all
and
a spiral.
The other important reason that spheres, because I'm so glad you mentioned liminal spaces. So the idea is in Zarfaxology is that there is space between the Zerfax spheres. That's why, see, the reason they're made spheres is so you recognize the space between the Zerfaxes. So that's how the other Zerfaxes are able to reflect into each other, and how other, you know, entities and forces outside of our Zerfax, your own Zerfax, can interact with it. So that's the other reason. And with a box, then all the space is filled up with a box. But a sphere leaves empty space between the other spheres, allowing for other things to enter.
I think you're muted, Franklin, and frozen. There we go. Were you about to say something, Franklin?
Can you not hear me, Cosmic? Can other people
now
not
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. You were muted a second ago.
Oh, very weird. Maybe it was a delay. It makes me think about that wonderful saying the Christians have called the sphere of God. You must have sphere for God. You must sphere God. Maybe that's really what they're talking about. Maybe the fear of God is recognizing the sphere of God is outside and inside, which is actually an almost nonsensical concept to wrap their head around. Because when I say nonsensical, I mean try and sense it. Right? Like you got to be inside out, upside down, back to front, wrapped up. The outside and the inside's got to be, you got to be pulling your guts outside of you and pushing the outside into you to imagine this concept, right? And that's like a little bit upsetting, no? So maybe there's something upsetting about understanding the structure of the universe, and we call that the sphere of God. But then, of course, the Christians had to take it to the next extent, the fear of God. I don't know. It's a very interesting concept about fear and sphere being so closely aligned, where when you drop the S off of the word fear, sphere, right? You drop the S, you losing a fundamental pattern of the movement. And you're now looking at the structure rather than the movement. And maybe if you look at the structure of something that is inside and the outside, it's nonsensical. But if you think of the movement of it, it's suddenly sensible. I don't know. Does that make sense to you guys as a concept?
Well, I think that the letter S represents a snake. The S represents a snake for me, which is the intuition or wisdom. So if you don't have that, then you have fear. Hence the fear of God opposed to the sphere or Sophia as God. And God sounds a lot like God as well. And then perhaps God is the liminal, and perhaps the liminal is the God. The God, G-O-D, being guardian or guardians of dimensions. The liminal is the guardian of dimensions. You have to travel the liminal to reach other dimensions, but you have fear if you don't have wisdom traveling the liminal spaces to other dimensions. So most are stuck with fear of God, fear of the guards, fear of the guides, which is the liminal. So they're stuck in one frequency, one sphere, and therefore they have fear. This is what the Lord of the Rings is about, and one ring to rule them all, one frequency to rule them all. This is also Ahriman. This is the hive mind. This is the cult. This is the cult, to be stuck in one sphere rather than traveling the liminal and reaching other dimensions. But first, you have to meet God, which is the liminal, in my opinion, which is the guardians of the threshold. You have to travel these, what I call rivers, in our psyche, the spaces in between, to bring back concepts of other places. So yeah, I think God, guide, guard, it's all the same.
Welcome to everybody that's joined. And please, people, don't be shy. Don't forget, like, share, put it out there, social platforms, let people see it. The more people that actually are part of this conversation, see this conversation, the more energetic and vibrant it becomes. Isn't that interesting? Welcome, Lockie. We got you in the crew. We still got Carly running strong. We got D-Love. Welcome, D-Love. We've got Tom Rue rocking, Howard rocking. We've also got Cosmic the Prankster pranking up the cosmos. And we've got everybody else that's been in here. Big love and blessings, the star. Hope you guys are all having an absolutely lovely conversation. I hope you're enjoying it. And yeah, I think like there's a lot in what you guys have been unpacking. I was making myself another smile in the kitchen. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is my third cup of cacao. Think of it as I'm not enjoying cannabis, but I'm enjoying cacao. Yummy. You can just like swim in this stuff. I would love to have a cacao bath one day. Maybe when I'm rich. No, I don't think I'd be able to waste cacao like that. But the idea is quite pleasant. But yeah, this idea of this cosmic space, and this cosmic, this S. If you think about an S, it's fire. And S is fire. Shh. That's the sound that fire makes. And so you think of the elemental creatures related to that. Salamanders, right? Hissing serpents. Serpents are creatures of fire. Salamanders. And so that's quite an interesting concept. You know, I think when we're thinking of the fiery principle, we're thinking of that fire, which is the the ignition, right? The ignit. And nit, Germanic, has got to do with new, knit, and free. Knit, knit, and then you think of things that are knitting together, you know, which is creating something. It's highly creative potential. So I think of that serpentine S fiery potential as that creative potential, which is like the igniting factor, the start of things, the seminal fluid that impregnates the egg cosmically, the cosmic egg, to produce, you know, a fetal expression of what was before, so that what comes after can be maintaining the harmonies of balance of that which is the beginning and the end as a continual loop. And that continual loop is in a constant state of ignition. So we think of like alchemical potential. We're thinking of sulfur. Sulfur is the fiery principle, but soul, the soul, when it's implied by time, the T cross, the soul then becomes the crystallizing factor of the persona. The ego expresses itself as a persona, and that becomes like stuck, you know, in the moment of a crystal. And though that sulfur is the part that is in a state of movement, but specifically igniting the flame. So it's really interesting when we look at these sounds, and if you imagine the words sound of S and sh, so it's the teeth. It's basically air rushing over the teeth. And from a Hebrewic perspective, that literally means fire. That is literally the element of fire being expressed in its most fundamental state as the tarot card of the final judgment, right? And that judgment, that final judgment card, is the second last card in the major arcana. So there's a lot to consider there when we think of this alchemical fire as being an important driver behind the expression of light. And the expression of light is the creative ignition that the creative principle has upon our mind. And our mind is water, right? We've mined this water comes bubbling up, and the air bubbles through our mind like little thoughts. But the bubbling of the thoughts moving through our mind is because of the scintillating stress created by the fiery principle of heat being applied to the water. And this gets the boiling temperature, or moves us towards boiling, producing the buoyancy that will create the elasticity between the moving elements of the fire, so that it has structure. Because fire has no structure, doesn't it? Water seems to have no structure, but it is the root of structure. And air are the principles of structure. So we have the principles of structure through air, the root of structure in water, which has no structure but implies structure as a continual expression of structure, without being stuck in structure, where air creates the differentiations necessary for that structure so that the fire can propel the bubbles through the water. And that will then produce a crystallization. This is like alchemy we're talking about, is it not? It's just rather interesting when we start looking at how these elements combine and how they each have like a role to play when we're talking about the black sun. Because talking about the black sun, we must be talking about fire, right? But there's also quite a watery element to the idea of the black sun. The very notion that it's cold light is a conundrum, because hot is the element of fire, cold is the element of water. But water is wet and fire is dry. But what is dry is earth, but cold. So the cold light of Saturn is the structure of earth. And so there's a relationship between the structure of earth and this fundamental expression of cold light, which I think makes sense that the moon is, I don't know if you caught this, Shinobi, but these are ideas that are expressed in the Sanskrit architecture as well as other systemic principles. I dug up some receipts from the Arabic ideas of the cold, of the lunar potential, right? Of the lunar light being cold light, as in it's not reflecting the sun, the moon, it's reflecting the black sun. What do you think of that as a concept?
Well, I just want to say that I don't think water technically is wet. It gets you wet. It gets things wet, but it's not actually wet itself. And then in regards to the black light being cold, the black light, from my understanding, isn't cold. It's what gives you like a warm hug. It's the white light that's cold. The black light is possibly like when people die and they feel peaceful, they feel like they're back in the womb. That is the black light. That's you going back into the black light. And that's warm. That it warms your soul. So the black light, I'll just say that whoever said it's cold, I disagree. It's my intuition tells me that the black light is warm, and that it would be watery, and then the white light is actually a cold light. And in regards to the moon reflecting the black sun, that is very interesting. I personally think that the moon is there as a distraction from the black sun. Perhaps when people go a bit like crazy during a full moon or whatever, perhaps it's drawing up some of the black sun, and perhaps we would be connected to the black sun if the moon wasn't there. Like we have the father sun, and then we have the mother earth, which at its core emits the black sun, which we're connected to. But I think the moon definitely has some kind of, I'm not sure, some kind of like system in place to distract us, and that is the white light. That's the white light that perhaps when we die we see that we're not supposed to go towards, like the reincarnation trap, whatever. But the way I view it is that that's not when we actually die, it's right now when we're alive. Like that white light is technology, and that we're just being distracted. We're being distracted. This is the same process when we die happening now while we're alive, being distracted by all these white lights, where really we should be going in towards the black light, acknowledging the black light which is all around us. Like if anyone's ever done acid, you can feel it, the kind of water that's everywhere. You know, other people might say it's like fire or earth or air. I'm saying it's water because that's what I'm mostly connected to, but you can feel this watery substance all over you and around you. And you can see the blackness in all things, like the coming and going, the shimmering. It's not all solid. It's like 1% solid. The 99% is the blackness, is the darkness, which is all around us, which we can kind of tune into and tap into. So I think that the black light is warm and the white light is cold. That's what I reckon.
I thought when you're talking about acid, I thought you were going to mention when you see lights flickering in the periphery of your vision, because that's what I would always experience a lot when I would do like psychedelics like that. That was when I knew it was starting. I would feel like flickers, like to my left or the right that I couldn't quite see. And sometimes that's how I kind of think about like these spectral or sort of magical like lights that don't really have a kind of a physical basis. It's like they exist sort of outside of your physical vision in this kind of weird, abstract, like almost synesthetic kind of way. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because I've had this a couple of times, but last night when I was going to bed, bearing in mind it was a Scorpio full moon. It's a Scorpio full moon at the moment, and that's my ascendant at 29 degrees, which probably matters. Maybe, I don't know. But anyways, full moon regardless. Last night when I was lying in bed, at the end of the room, I could see, recently I've started seeing this kind of like mirage. Like, I don't know if it's like the ether or something. I have seen it in between leaves often, but now I can see it kind of with most things. I could see it at the end of my bedroom, and I was looking at it for ages because I've realized I like meditating with my eyes open, which is weird. Most people meditate with the eyes closed, but I like meditating with them open, like staring into the darkness is my favorite way to meditate. And I've realized that that is a kind of meditation, just staring into the darkness, and you can see like lights like around and like beings which are called the undine, I think, and just like worlds basically. But yeah, last night, I've had this before a few times. I felt like I was on acid basically, not like just subtly. Like I could feel like it's been similar to acid, similar to mushrooms. Basically, whenever I do mushrooms, not for a long time, but my nasal, I've got a sinus infection, but my nostrils were so clear, my breathing was so clear, and my senses were really enhanced, and my hands felt like a bit wet. And this was after staring into this kind of what I thought was the ether, is kind of like flickering, kind of like plasma, which was just parts of my room moving around. But I spoke to a friend about that a few weeks ago, and she was like, because I explained it to her the last time this happened, I was like, oh, like a while ago this happened. She's like, oh, have you thought about meditating when that happens? And I was lying in bed really tired, and I was like, had this feeling like I was kind of on acid, like connected to another realm, maybe another realm or whatever. But yeah, I decided to meditate, but I find it quite hard doing it with my eyes closed. So I just turned off the lights and had a dark room, and I was just staring, and it's so peaceful to stare, to just see the kind of like shimmering of these things which are called the undine, I think. And then you can occasionally see like little lights moving around, but they move at different speeds, because you guys were talking about light not moving at different speeds earlier, but I see these little lights and one moves really slowly and another one will go. It's so interesting. But yeah, I wonder what that's about. I don't know why I felt like I was on acid. I've had that feeling like 3 or 4 times. It's pretty cool.
Access the indeterminate zone without drugs, basically. The way I see, when it comes to all this stuff about about meditation, I do the open eye meditation stuff too. And one of the reasons I realized why closed eye meditation doesn't work for me is because I like subconsciously visualize the room that I'm in, which makes it harder for me to visualize with my eyes closed. So for example, like if I'm lying in my bed and I'm trying to visualize myself being in like a field, for example, it's hard to do because my brain automatically like projects the room I'm in existing outside of my eyes. And that's kind of how I came up with like the idea of the Azer facts, that we have a kind of a weird like So basically the idea is we have a kind of a mental map of the world we exist in, right? So let's say you have a route to work or school. You don't really have a map because you, in your mind, you can kind of visualize like where you're going to go. Like, so if you're turning, left to go to your route to work, in your mind's like eye, you can kind of see where that's going to go. And I realized that if I go to a place that I'm traveling out of town, or if it's a place I've never been to, I don't have that mind's eye thing anymore. And I realized I can actually weirdly visualize better, because I noticed that what's going on is that you're trying to visualize things, but even with your eyes closed, your mind is still trying to process the environment that you're in, which makes it more difficult to visualize things. So you have to learn how to kind of like separate yourself from the environment, or the other option is try to work the environment, within your visualization. So I do the open-eye visual meditation thing too, but I always keep one eye closed. And the reason I keep one eye closed is it makes it easier for me to perceive the edges of my vision. Because I was thinking, like, in terms of parallel universe theory. So let's say you're sitting in your room right now and you look to the corner of your eye and you see a big spider dangling from a spider web. And it's like dangling down from it. And then you take a look to your left and there's no spider there. It was just your imagination. But if parallel universe theory is true and there is an infinite number of multi-universes, then that means that there was a universe where that spider was actually there. I mean, it's possible that a spider could enter your room. So my theory is that what you see in your peripheral vision are actually potential parallel universes. So this is like my idea is that the peripheral vision is like a doorway into the fourth dimension. And by keeping only one eye open, it makes that process easier to do. And the other thing you do is you try to make sure that you focus on the space where your peripheral vision intersects with your mind's eye. So let's say, for example, I have one eye open and I see like a dresser or a bookcase at the edge of my vision, right? So I see half of the bookcase at the edge of my vision. And the idea is you're supposed to kind of expand your mind so it goes outside of your peripherals, and you try to intersect what you're seeing with your third eye and put it at the very edge of your peripheral vision. And when you do this, it's like you can perceive the fourth dimension. It's like, it's crazy. And I through understanding this fourth dimensional space that I'm talking about right now, this is basically how I started this whole Zarfax theory from that particular idea. And I just basically expanded upon that. So in terms of like meditation, then when you see things outside of your peripheral vision, you're actually seeing potential alternate universes through sort of the curvature of your vision. So that there's just like a slight angular curve of light at the edges of your peripheral vision, which sort of allow you to see extra dimensional realms that exist on the very edges. So I've learned that if you want to perceive the fourth dimension, you have to start with your peripheral vision and learning to perceive outside of it.
Yeah, okay, so to catch up with there's three things. There's what you were saying now, Cosmic, and there's what you were saying before, Toby, and then there's what Cosmic was saying before. So to go back to the beginning, the flicker rate. The interesting thing is this is actually why I started podcasting. This is the reason why I started. It started off for me with one video that I did, and basically that one video became if you go to the channel and you go to courses, you'll see, and I noticed the other day that I haven't uploaded all 108. Wow, you guys are in for luck. There's 9 videos to upload for lessons 2. I uploaded them to my Patreon. I forgot to upload them to my so it started off with one video, right? And one video was because I heard people talking about astral and etheric things, and I was like, some so-called guru was trying to say that they were like different words for the same thing. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold the horse cart here. And so that got me inspired to start to make a video, to just put out an alternative perspective so that people can realize actually that's not really how it's been understood in multiple traditions around the world. And if you experience it yourself, you'll notice it's not quite the same. There's two very, very different modes of travel. But getting back to the flicker rate, and this is what inspired this. When I did that one video, I realized I had to do another video, and I realized I had to do another video. And before I knew it, I ended up doing what was a succinct, natural expression of 108 lectures, short 10-minute lectures that came over a period of 108 days. And that was like an entire course that I sort of channeled every morning after solar gazing. So that's for people that are interested. I actually break down all of this, but not just what it is, but how to do it and how to develop it and how to actually the specifics behind different elements of it. That flicker rate, which is essentially your brain is downloading consciousness and uploading consciousness into your brain. That's what the brain is. It's an oscillating freaking thing. It downloads one piece of information through the hormonal field. It correlates that electrically through the central nervous system and then uploads that through the electrical field. And so you got this magnetic, electrical, electromagnetic expression of the prana, the life force that's coming through the brain and the body. And so this is why your meridian systems of your feng shui body system, which we access when you're doing like acupressure or whatever, relates to your hormonal centers, and how the hormonal centers relate to the neural centers and the particular nadis, the particular channels, or what they call meridians in traditional Chinese medicine. But this relationship in the brain-body system has got to do with this principle of downloading hormonal emotional intelligence and uploading rational intelligence. And the upload of rational intelligence produces this form and structured reality that we're experiencing, and the downloading of the astral produces the flow of the energy. And so this flow of energy mixing with the form, that sleepy thing that you were talking about that we upload, and this fluid thing of movement that we download produces that flicker rate, because it's download, upload, download, upload, download, up, and it's a continual cycle, but it's happening extremely fast. So that flicker rate, there's many ways of inducing it. I covered this actually in a lot of these little videos and particular exercises that are really simple. And I actually want to do more specific work with teaching people to discover the different flicker rate between the air element, the different flicker rate with the water element, the different flicker rate with the fire element, the different flicker rate with the earth element. They have their unique flicker rates, and they have unique experiences, each of these elemental states. And there are actually simple, usable techniques to inspire very specific experiences through each elemental state of consciousness. But this download and upload flicker rate is really fundamental to understanding how the pranic field is becoming an electromagnetic resonance. And this electromagnetic resonance, which is matter and time and space, is channeling through it the prana. And the prana is the source of this electromagnetic field. And this electromagnetic field is, as we know, it's a toric expression of outwards, inwards, like a beating heart. So the universe is basically lots of really, really minuscule beating hearts, beating really, really fast. And like you say, Toby, the hearts aren't all beating at the same pace. There's different layers. That's what it is. And as you deepen your perspective into each layer, you notice the layers behind it and the other layers, and you notice sometimes you're seeing that layer, sometimes you're seeing this layer, and the different layers are like almost like layers. It's a good way of thinking of the elemental states of expression and physicality and consciousness merging are different layers, and we see these as elemental progressions. And so when we look at this field that you were talking about, Toby, right? It's like a field. Let's think of it. And it's interesting that it's easier to see in the dark. This was why, oh, by the way, I'll give you guys a hint. It's easier to see when you're crapping yourself. It's easier to see when you're afraid of not being alive. Heads up. Ancient Egyptian rituals, buried underground in a sarcophagus, right? Going deep into a cave and having the cave walled up by other initiates, and you're stuck in this absolute darkness. You don't know what's in here with you. That fear.
Right.
I used to go
do that initiation.
Hey,
sign me up.
well, I used to do it here on my local Table Mountain on the other side. You see, there were parts of the forest which were like quite high trees, and they're pine trees, but they grow prodigiously here. And I used to go, when it was the dark moon, into these deep dark forests, and I've got an innate sense with creatures. I can sense snakes, I can sense spiders and scorpions. I can feel these things. And I used to go to the place where the nests were. The nests of scorpions, the nests of these dangerous spiders. We've got some pretty dangerous ones here. The snakes, where the predators are busy hunting. And I would go deep into that place. Now, this is so dark you can't see your face. You can't see your hand, right? You can see nothing. And I used to go in there, and I would sit in this place aware of all the danger around me, because I've specifically tuned in to find the most dangerous place and go into that place. And sometimes I'd have like big webs stuck to my head when I walked in. And I reckon I've got big spiders crawling. And we got spiders the size of our hands, right? Like, this is Cape Town, man. We got all sorts of stuff in these wilds. And black scorpions and the big black scorpions, they give you a nasty sting. And cobras and puff adders and a number of snakes that can like end your life. And so I'd go and sit in here, and I'd become afraid, and I'd sit in that fear, and I would digest that fear. And when you start digesting that fear, the first thing you notice is, wow, you can see in the absolute dark. You can see using that black sun radiance. So it's quite interesting. And then you start to see all these different layers of reality. They're like layered, and it's basically, like you say, it's inducing a kind of a DMT experience in your brain, because nothing shouts DMT like fear. This is why, like, a lot of people say, like, what's your shamanic ritual initiation? I'm like, dude, it's the fear of not being alive. What do you mean? What I mean is, like, to become a shaman, I had to risk life and limb on a number of occasions. And in that fear, that's where the guides come to me, because I'm now ready to leave this world. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to survive this. I'm ready. Okay, let's do this. And suddenly you're not alone. The ancestors are there, and they're like, no, we got you, baby. Don't worry. We got you. You're like, you got me? Yeah, we got you. We're going to get you through this. I'm like, okay, cool. Get me through this if you want me to, but I've already made up my mind. I'm okay with not being alive. That's like that level of extreme opening, rupturing of the soul that initiation truly represents, and did represent in the ancient times, before people invented bells and whistles and incense and had cute little incantation ritual initiations like what people do in modern times. That's like deep shamanism. So like that's really how you become a shaman, is you strip away the layers until you're ready to not be alive. And when you're accepting that you're not going to be alive, then you're there, you're ready. But that whole stripping away involves facing very deep, very intense fears. And so there's this relationship between the sphere of space, reality, and the fear at the heart of experiencing that the outer and the inner are one coil of a serpent. And this field, these fields of filters of different reality frequencies, and it's like a soup of frequencies, but they're overlaid, and we can shift our consciousness towards different elemental states and experience different particular radiances and frequencies of it. And what I would say, and this is something I wanted to say to you earlier, Shinobi, I almost forgot, was the distinction between the black light and the radiance of the black sun. Many people that have researched this think that it's the same thing, but like the black light is a very, very rare and undocumented thing, but it comes from the Sufi tradition primarily, and it is the notion of Ein Soph and Ein Soph Or are the embodiment of this within the Western occultism. And within the Vedic practice of mysticism, we see the relationship of the fundamental, the Om Tat Sat. Now, the Om Tat Sat, the Om comes from the Tat, comes from the Sat. And these are an expression of what they call Sadashiva. This is like the fundamental mental radiance of fundamental state. But that is separate to Mahakala, as they call it in Tibetan schools of thought, for example, which Mahakala and in Vedic schools of thought, which represents the great wheel of time. And the great wheel of time is bound by its own essence. And so this radiance of the black sun is related to the unmanifest aspects of reality as ourselves, as who I am, as the persona, the ego, as all of these integral parts of who I am. Though outside of this, there is something a lot less tangible that cannot be perceived or personified or understood or conceived of while in the state of me or I, as this is something that is too profound in its deconstructive value to be put into a constructed model, for it would deconstruct the entire universe. We're talking about Kali in her most mystic representation.
Could you not experience it but not be able to relay it?
Well, here's the thing. The radiance of the black sun, yeah, completely. And it's not easy, and experiencing that, like, if you like, if you are on psychedelics, you'll experience it, right?
Then in the same sense, you can experience it not on psychedelics, because psychedelics just activates what's in you already. Hence why the black sun is in you already. And I would love to try and argue the point, as someone only just looking into this, bearing in mind that I do think they're the same. And I'd love to talk about why they're not the same, because they seem to be the same thread. The black sun, the Ein Soph, the inner self, the black light within, the black light around us. And then you can experience it on like acid, psilocybin, but that's only activating something in you already. Like DMT is in us already. Like that is in us already. It just needs to be activated, and you can experience it, but not what's the word? I said relay, but I mean describe it, like quantify it. Basically, it's unquantifiable. I'm sure you can experience it while alive. I don't think anything is out of the realms of possibility, and for people to say, oh, you can't experience it in this lifetime or anything, who's to say at all? Who's to say?
The black light, what we're talking about, is something that is specific. When we speak of the black light, when we speak about the black radiance of the black sun, that's very much within our field of experience, potentially. And like you say, the psychedelics is one thing, but that's why I was pointing out that fear is a very powerful DMT releaser in the brain, right? Facing fears. This is nothing is as potent as that, as opening you up to like looking into the black sun. You want to see the black sun radiance? Though when we speak of the black light, imagine the concept. The black light is a very very subtle, extremely subtle potential that how can I put this? when I went through 9 layers of expansion into different bubbles or different aspects of this reality, I got to the final one, which is like that final gate. And that's where they stopped me from going through. And I could sense that there was beyond this, right? I could sense that there was beyond this, but I could sense that there was a finite sphere that I was within, and that I would have to leave the sphere to experience that. And I was ready to leave the sphere because I was in such an extreme state of ecstasy. More ecstasy than I could ever have imagined experiencing on any substance, through concentration on that one point within the entire universe. And that one point took me to this boundary where I was ready to pierce this veil, this final element of this, it encapsulates us. And I decided I needed to see what was on the outside. So if you think about a toric field, you've got the outside of a toric field and you've got the inside of the toric field. And so in a sense, I agree with you that the inside and the outside are essentially the same, but they're not, but they are. So the involution toric field and the outpouring toric field are essentially the same thing. But when we're speaking about the outside, we're talking about the source beyond 0 points.
But
and so that source,
but the source isn't outside, though.
This
so
is,
going
this is
beyond
what
okay, right.
This is what I'm trying to. So I'm trying to explain to you. There's an inversion. There's an inversion that happens when we're passing away. That we travel outside and the universe is inverted. It's inside out, right? But we're traveling outside and we're expanding outwards into the center. It's a very convoluted, like imagine a figure of 8 inverted, spinning. And so these 2 different spins are dismembering themselves, and there's 3 aspects of this dismembering happening, and it's all being torn to pieces from the center. And from the center, it's being ripped out. And those pieces being ripped out are the 3 personalities that we have that get ripped out of us. Or shall we say the 3 get dismembered, and in the dismembering of these 3, memory is lost. That's why we don't remember, right? Our past lives to the next life, because it's been dismembered. And those 3 come out of each other like the only thing I can compare it to is like that 3, there's this symbol that you'll see of 3 things coming out of one. There's a Celtic spiral of 3 spirals that come out of a same point of a spiral. That's what you experience when you pass away, if you are pure enough to experience that. In other words, if you're not stuck in and I'm not speaking conceptually here, right? I'm talking about this is like when you drown. Like when I drowned, this is what I experienced. And so leaving this physical, watching the universe torn apart, but it was torn apart from my inside. And as it was torn out of me, I noticed that the entire thing was inverted. And that this cosmic thing was like profoundly, but that there was like Cosmic is saying, there's like you're in a sphere of sorts, and there is actually a place where you actually are bound within this sphere, and you do leave. There is an outside there. So, like when I came across this idea of the Ein Sof Or, I was relating it to my experience of leaving the flesh, of passing away, of having my memories ripped out of me, of becoming an adult as a 3-year-old, and remembering my past lives and why I was here and how I was brought here, and then being forced back into a body as a 3-year-old, and not being able to make sense out of this, but understanding something cosmic about the inversion of the universe as a little child. And then that drove me to understand these cosmic things. So I think that there's been a lot of people that have written about it, but haven't experienced it. There's a lot of people that have spoken about it, made YouTube videos about it, but they haven't experienced it. So they don't really know. So they they're imagining and conceptualizing it and philosophizing it, which is all good and well. There will probably be certain truths that will be released in that process, but it's not the same as actually, like, I know Cape Town. I can talk about Cape Town because I am in Cape Town and I've been in Cape Town. I know London because I've been in London. I understand London. I know what London is like. But if someone hasn't been there and they've read books about London and they've imagined what London's like without having been there, there's only so close they're going to get to understanding London. But having been around London and knowing London quite well, you're going to have a different idea of what London is. And it's the same sort of idea, really. And this principle of expansion, that of things being torn out, that are your memories, when you notice these things being this, and it's like a three-armed spiral. When that has been removed, you are no longer who you are. The idea of who I was, I'm not that person anymore. I'm different. I'm a something else. And then in order to come back, you have to put on those clothes again of the identity. And then you're back in this identity again, having experienced that, like, I'm not this identity. I'm actually, there's this cosmic sort of shift of laughter and interplay of the ridiculousness of this play that we're in, because it is really like a play. Now that fundamental exterior, here I'm just guessing, I'm philosophizing, that must be the center of the toric field out there. And what we experience is the circumference. What we experience as the center of our toric field is actually the circumference of our physical reality in this inverted experience of being outside and being ripped out, literally ripped out. And because it's an upsetting experience to be ripped out of your body because of, like, excruciating pain, right? And all these people that have these near-death experiences, I'm like, yeah, mate, you fell asleep. I'm sorry, it's a lucid dream. The fact that you fell asleep, I'm sorry, it's a lucid dream. You could write as many books as you want about near-death experiences, but you fell asleep, and at some point you've woke up with a kind of an experience, and it's a kind of a dream. It's very different when you do not fall asleep. When you are awake through the suffering and the agony and the excruciating agony of your body going into spasms and your lungs exploding, and that excruciating agony, and being aware of the juices in your brain secreting and the DMT running through your blood, and suddenly that the whole universe is just sound and it's vibration, and actually experiencing that, and then feeling like, hey, this vibration is like, that's the whole universe. Like, that's weird. And then that vibration carries you out and out and out and out of yourself. It's like you're expanding, and then you get to a point of expansion where you're now looking inside yourself, and the whole universe is what you're seeing, and you are that entire whole universe. It's a heavy concept. And then that thing is being torn open, and you go, hold on, those are my memories I'm looking at in that universe being ripped out of that place, like it's spiraling out of that point, those three things. And this is what the Celtic three spirals trying to explain. Obviously, there've been high initiates that were able to train and have this actual experience of leaving the physical realm, of going final tom bye, here I go, I'm not coming back. And so that experience then gives you a keynote to that inside out experience. But that inside out experience then it's all vibration. So now coming back into the body, to the sphere of all of these reality and these elements that have been stacked up and put together like building blocks, that in and out constant movement that Cosmic was talking about as a flicker rate is the essential uploading and downloading of this process that we're in, like a sphere. But we aren't actually here. We're actually elsewhere. And when I decided that I'm done with this, I'm going to sit down right now and I'm going to get enlightened, and I'm going to sit here until I'm enlightened. I don't care how long it takes. Yeah, sure, I did that 24-hour meditation under a tree the one day, and that was great. I opened up all sorts of psychic windows, but I'm done with that. I don't want to see psychic stuff. I don't want to experience it. I'm going to sit here until I'm done. And if I don't survive, then so be it. And I went into this point where there was just one point, and that was the entire universe. And I thought everything else was gone. And then I broke out of this field of vibration. I was like, oh, right, I'm back here again. Like when I was a child, when I was drowning. Okay, cool. And there was euphoria. And I just went deeper in. And wow, I broke out of the next boundary. And the vibrations were higher and the euphoria was higher. And I broke out of it. And by the second boundary, it was like the most powerful MDMA you could imagine. I've never had any. By the third boundary, the fourth boundary, by the fifth, by the sixth, by the seventh, by the eighth, by the ninth boundary, I was in such a high state that when this circle of elders above me said to me, I can't pass because I will not survive, I was like, I was so euphoric. Like, what is survival? What is life? What is not being alive? I can sense there's more out there, but I can't see it because of this boundary. I am going to go through this boundary. And I decided that this boundary was me. I was this boundary. And there was just one point. The entire thing is one point. My Shiva eye is piercing this boundary. And this is a dangerous samadhi practice. Don't any of you do it because you might not survive it. I'm being real. I'm being serious. I didn't know at the time. I was cocky. I was young. I thought that because, at that time, I've already done 35,000 hours of meditation. I'm ready to do this. And I wasn't ready then. I thought I was. It took me another 10, 15,000 hours of meditation to realize how little I knew. So if you haven't done like 30, 40,000 hours of meditation, you probably don't want to even try that. And that's on the background of someone who actually experienced it as a child. So just to give you a scale of how much work there is to do, there's an incredibly large amount of work to do to prepare the consciousness to experience these extremely subtle states of force, of consciousness. And, you got to train, like first meditate for an hour, meditate for 2 hours, meditate for 4 hours, meditate for 6 hours, meditate for 8 hours, meditate for 12 hours. Then build yourself up to the point that you can meditate for 24 hours without stopping. Do you understand the excruciating agony of meditating for 24 hours? You cannot imagine the mental stress and the rupture that it takes to meditate for 24 hours. Imagine trying to meditate for 6 hours if you haven't gotten over 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's like a gradation, and it takes many years of extreme training to get to the point where you can push your mind to that point where there is just one point and there's nothing else. But that is the goal in like the most fundamental state. And there seems to be a universal exploration, whether Buddha, Vedic, whichever cosmic alignment, even the Kabbalah, they all point towards this one point, and that's the focal point, and that's the Shiva eye that transcends all time and space, Mahakala and everything together. So when one is like pushing one's consciousness to that point, it's almost extreme. It's not necessarily healthy. But I wanted to go through that point, and this circle of elders said to me I couldn't. And that got the fire. There's a fiery element in me. I was like, oh, I can't. Watch me. And I allowed myself to be absorbed into that membrane, and they grabbed my mother. They grabbed my mother. They went and fetched my bloody mother, and they brought her to me in front of me right there to show me my mother. And I was like, whoa. And I saw flashes of why I need to be in this flesh. My mother, me, my child. I saw these flashes like I need to, the lineage, for my mother to be able to reincarnate, I have to have a child. Wow, what? And it brought me back to reality. My mother has a cosmic cycle of, there's so many other things here more than just me. And I'm just one small little piece of a big chain. And that was a heavy realization for me to take. And that was when I decided, okay, I won't push through this membrane, but beyond this membrane, there was, and I can't call it a black light. The black light is not a light that you see. I can only imagine that this is what the Sufis are talking about, because I'm guessing that they've gotten to that point where that is the final point of samadhi. And if you go past that point, you are no longer physically alive and you lose the body. You're gone. How I can only imagine that's what they are insinuating from my experience of the black light. And I came back into my body and I was euphoric still for like in that euphoric state later on. my ex-wife said to me that there was a message from my mom in our communications. And I went to the actual internet connection, and my mom was freaking out because she had had a dream at the same time that they had brought her there. And in her dream, what she thought was a dream, she saw me with the light getting brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. And she said that she saw this light getting so bright that it was going to explode and extinguish itself. And she was so afraid, asking me if I'm okay. Has something happened? Have I been in let me know. Are you alive? Has there been an accident? What's happened? Because my mom also has ESP. She has her own lineage of ESP and psychic things, just like my father did. They come from different lineages, but they both have the vision, the sight. She can see those that are deceased. My dad had telepathy and he could see the future. So they have two different rays of ability. But so it was like a real slap in the face for me. Like, wow, my mom actually remembered that experience. I didn't expect her to remember it. But she woke up in shock, worried that her son was not alive, 4 hours after this experience, or 3 hours after this experience, and emailed me telling me about this experience. So it was a completely real experience that was phenomenally experienced by both me and my mother in objective time and space. So it means it wasn't just inside of me. This was a cosmic experience. And the reality of that humbled me, because I had been shown by a shaman that I will not become, I have to wait like more than almost 20 more years, right? Before that. And I don't want to wait in that many decades, but this time was decades ago. And he drew the timeline of my life when I was initiated, starting at my birth, and every event that had happened throughout my childhood and my life was on this timeline. And every event that came up to the point of what he expressed to me, you fool Krishna, at this point. And so that was for me like a shocking revelation of the scale of this universe. But like you say, cosmic, there seems to be a finite boundary that we're locked into within this Zerfax, as you call it. This is why I like what you say, cosmic. It seems to make a lot of sense to me when you speak of these spherical things, because it felt like I was in a sphere, to be honest with you, cosmic, when I was this child experience. And later on, when I had this more adult experience, it felt like I went to the outer layer of a sphere, outer layer to the final boundary of that sphere, but knowing that if I go through that, I won't be physically alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because that kind of aligns with what the Fae talk about in terms of going to different Zarfexes. So the idea is that in our Zarfex, there's two sides, right? The Zarfex interior, which is like you can go 4 Zarfaxes deep into the Zarfex interior, and you can go 4 Zarfaxes deep into the indeterminate zone. And the idea is within this body that we have here, our physical body cannot go beyond the 4th sector of the indeterminate zone, but we can mentally project an astral body outside of it. But it aligns with exactly what you're saying, is that, see, the idea is like basically what I figure is that when you get to the 4th level of the indeterminate zone, you're basically so deep into the DMT realm, you basically forget who you are. And because you've forgotten who you are, you no longer have the mental capacity to navigate and project your mind further into that space, which is why the Fae say you should only go into the 1st or 2nd Zerfax of the indeterminate zone and then project and then sort of do like a mental astral projection. But it's interesting, like when it comes to, I don't think I've really had like a near-death experience like that. It's like a really like cool story, but it is kind of interesting though that how a lot of like the seed or inception for our spiritual path, has to do with stuff from our early childhood and like reconnecting to those feelings that we had. There's undeniable like an element of like childhood nostalgia that comes with this Fae practice and sort of going back to those early days, when you're a kid and you're into like Disney movies and fantasy and stuff like that. And, you're connected on that level. But an interesting like perspective that the Fae have kind of showed it to me, and I'm kind of like, well, I'm not 100% sure it's verifiable or not, but it was also the first time I ever got like way too high on cannabis was but it was the strangest sensation I ever felt. So I'm sure you can relate to this because you've lucid dreamed before. That when you have a lucid dream and you're doing whatever you want in your lucid dream, there's the kind of meta awareness of like, okay, I'm in the dream world, and sort of outside of me, there's this meta of the awake world that I can awake into, because you're not afraid in the dream world, because it's like, well, if a monster is coming, after me, or the cops are going to come to arrest me, I can just open my eyes and wake up into the real world, and I'm out of this place. And so when you're in that dream world, you don't feel that anxiety. Well, on that cannabis experience, I felt that while I was awake. I'm like walking down this like forest, like bike pathway in the middle of the night with a couple of these other people. And I had the strangest sensation that what I saw in my physical vision was actually a closed eye visualization. Like, it's like you think about like a closed eye visualization, but in reverse, where instead of you close your eyes and you imagine you're someplace, what you do is you basically keep your eyes open and try to pretend you're in bed, closing your eyes, imagining you're in that place. And so, and I have this sensation with like the Fae and Ezethia, which is the Zarfex that they come from. And they basically tell me that I'm in a state, like I have a body there that's like in a state of hibernation or something like that. And that when I die in this physical world, my eyes will open there and I'll just wake up like this was all a dream. And so there's that kind of like, and I don't know, with the Fae, I'm always kind of like, I always like to try to like backtrack and make sure that like I'm not either like they're telling me the truth, or I'm not just like making something up for myself. But in a lot of ways, that perspective, just like as an idea, it's like it's so deep, it gives you a different perspective on things. Like, yeah, and the idea that everything is just a bunch of like dream bubbles and stuff. I don't know, man. Maybe you're from the outer Zarfaxes too. Who, I don't know. The Fae tell me that it's definitely a lot more common than we assume. But yeah, maybe you were trying to go back out there too. Who knows?
I think we're all from out there, except for the soulless ones.
Yeah, we know who.
That like, and I don't know about this, just what I've heard, what Blavatsky speaks about, and Steiner sort of hints at it a few times in his discussions. And it's just got to do with like beings that have that are being puppeted. Does that make sense?
Well, it's the idea is, but from the Fae's perspective on like humans, and specifically the ones that are kind of like conditioned to material reality. Well, that's just how their consciousness is. That's the sort of the world that their consciousness spawned from. So in the same way that a penguin prefers to live in the Arctic and a camel prefers to live in the desert, there are certain human beings, human souls, that this materiality is sort of orthogonal to their consciousness and their being. And I think perhaps for, spiritual people like us, our consciousness is orthogonal to some other kind of space, somewhere else. But, it's like, are they puppets? Well, they're certainly vacuous. I won't deny that, but that's where I get into the whole concept with like the Zurfixes. So Zurfix is the idea of the idea of false religions. So the idea, not even false religion, just religions basically turning into, certain structures themselves. So it's like a belief system, but it becomes alive in the dream world. Like, even if it's false, like the Zurfix essentially makes it real. And the thing that I've realized about Zurfixes is that when the Fae keep telling me this, is that you can't logically disprove a Zurfix, because a Zurfix is essentially a living thing. It's an organism. If you think about Christianity, for example, Christianity is not just the Bible. it is essentially the collective mind and consciousness of the people that believe in that religion. And through their consciousness and their experience, they essentially manifest it and make it real. And they make it manifest into reality. And that's essentially what the Fae call is Azurphics. And the idea is that Azurphics prevent you from understanding this outer Zarfek stuff I'm talking about by taking that membrane that you were trying to escape from and putting some kind of guardian threshold. And so the idea is whatever your belief in ultimate reality is, then becomes the thing that blocks that membrane that I'm talking about. So, for example, if you think there's some specific God that's the creator of the universe, that's what becomes the edge of that membrane. If you think that material existence is all that there is, that becomes the edge of the membrane. And the idea is, and why I'm so keen on my philosophy of mystery is what is able to pierce that membrane. Because when you open your mind to mystery, you realize that the membrane is just a membrane and you can cut through it. There are no beliefs holding you back. There are no doubts from scientists or other religious people with their dogma and their scriptures. When you are alone with the mystery and you accept that primordial other, there is like this deep like freedom where you are able to realize like, hey, there's a world outside of this. It's not necessarily like it's not like a nihilism where you become amoral and you become like, devoid of laws, or you think that nothing has any matter. All it really is simply going back to that place when you're 3 years old, because if you think about that near-death experience that you were talking about, like, I think one of the things that probably made that experience so much more euphoric is that you didn't have a religious architecture or a language really yet. I'm not sure at 3 years old, but not really at that point to really flavor and contextualize that experience. You were just left with that pure, raw, cosmic, primordial experience that can't be defined in religion. And that mystery, and it's like you were in that mystery, but you didn't really need this like religious structure to explain it. And when I talk about mystery, that's what I mean, like in a deeper philosophical sense, where you're at that place where you're like, I have no idea what the hell is going on, but it looks really like, I just really like these colors. It just really looks nice. And this thing, this shape, this looks really cool. And you just get back to that very simple space, that very simple mindset where you're just amused by like simple things. And when you open your mind to that mystery, it's like you can see past people's nonsense, and you can see past, and you realize that. But I think the typical thing about opening yourself up to that mystery is that it also does involve leaving behind certain comforting beliefs and luxuries that a lot of religious belief systems tell you, that like they have certain promises, certain contextualizations of how you understand the world. And that can be a difficult thing to do, to leave behind some of those structures that you once find comfortable. The thing about why it's difficult to leave behind a belief system is that, there's positive aspects about it that, like, for example, like before, and I believed in, more traditional occultism and magic because I was part of that community, I had a lot more faith in my belief. And so a lot of ways my magic was more powerful. And leaving behind, that and embracing the mystery, I kind of lost that power temporarily because I wasn't gaining that power from being part of that consensus or that group anymore. And I had to learn how to gain that power by myself without sort of siphoning it from being part of a group collective. But once I was able to sort of like, figure that out, you start to realize the tremendous freedom, and you realize how much, you were held back before. So, I think that when it comes to what you're talking about with these experiences, I think sometimes you might just want to think like, like when you try to like use religion to like make sense of it, and religious metaphors to try to kind of understand the archetypical relationship, maybe like try once to not do that, just as a thought experiment. Like, think about, like, what if you just, like, instead of looking at it from a narrative, just like, what does it mean? Maybe you're finding something, some sort of mystery and some aspect of the universe that nobody in any religion has touched on before, and that you're at the precipice of a mystery of a whole new world that maybe other mystics and other people have never seen before, because their minds are so conditioned by religion, because they're so conditioned by these beliefs. And, you know, that's the value of that primordial mystery, and sort of going beyond that, you know, traditional structure, because you realize, like, there's some really interesting stuff that exists outside of the mythology. Look at all these aliens. Look at this weird pyramid. It's red and it's got neon lights, and there's like weird antennas and masks coming out of it. Like, what the heck is all this stuff? And you're like, I've never seen any of this before. I've never seen this in any textbook. And mystery opens the gateways to that kinds of strangeness. I don't know if there's any value. I don't know. It's like there's something about that weirdness, because it's like, it's part of who I am, you know, and maybe that's why I explore it, because it's like you're finding yourself out there. I don't know. I kind of went on a ramble, but, you know, I think that it's important to keep the mystery alive, because the problem with religion is that it wants to explain everything. It wants to make sense of the world and contextualize it so everything seems safe and nice and easy to explain. But if you can resist that urge for temporarily, just for like a little bit, and just accept that mystery, you start to see different things. You start to come up with different observations and realizations, and you can understand things in contexts and ways that you never could before. And that's how you come up with like different languages and stuff, you know?
You know, I'm following you completely. Is that Indy? I'm keep trying to see what I'm seeing. Like, I was just worried, like, is Indy being arrested or something? Like, is he okay? Is that Indy that we see through the bushes?
He's like gathering leaves or something.
That is Indy. Okay, good. That is Indy. Just checking. The last time he pulled this stunt, he was like, the cops took him off. I was like, what happened? Like, is Indy with us? Is he good? He's fine. But I'm completely following what you're saying, and it makes perfect sense. And, you know, I've got a bit of a context there of the words that you were saying were inspiring thoughts and impressions in me. And so you had come from and I've also, I can relate to this. Yeah. When I grew up, when I was like, you know, 11, 12, it reawoke in me. Yeah. In a big way, where between the ages of like 6 and 11, it sort of went more dormant, right? I could still like have a connection with nature. I could still sense animals. I could still sense things outside. I could still have a feeling of what was going to happen, but it wasn't quite the same as when I was a child, right? Like the intensity of that experience, like you're talking about that, the difference of the power, right? That you could touch, the experiences that you could have of like literally entering into someone's mind versus just having an impression. And that drove me into occultism. And the occultism, I got to a point where, like, when I was like a young adult, where I was like, I think I've got everything I can get from this. Like, I think I've reached like a ceiling. And I was like, I need something else. And I didn't know at the time, but I needed India. It was calling me like so loudly. And I was like, what am I going to do? And the only thing I could think to do would be to just give up everything, to give up all my possessions and speak to the universe and say, if you want me in India, put me there. And the universe did it. Yeah. And it picked me up and it put me in India. Like crazy journey. And in India, I discovered something else, like the Tantra and how the yogas spoke to me, as opposed to the Western Hermetics, which is what these gentlemen had introduced me to Hermetic Kabbalah, and the Hermetics and the Kabbalah was what I like grew up on, you could say. And those training exercises and that path. And then I was like, 10 years later, and I was like, well, I've got all I can get from that. I went to Israel thinking like maybe the Jewish Kabbalah. And there I got connected to these, like, these teachers of the Hebrew University, and I spent a lot of time with them. And I was like, yeah, but no. But India was still crawling in my heart. Like, part of me just wanted to be in India, just wanted to get into the jungles. Just felt like my feet had got to go in that nature. And it was just like ache in my heart to be there. And when I got there, I can only say this. I moved from occultism to mysticism. And I think, like, now that I think about what you're explaining, is you were in occultism, and occultism is it's like a cult. Yeah. It's like you're part of a cult that what you were talking about before, and was the membrane that binds you. But what is the structure within that membrane is the egregoric field of matrix of consciousness that you're in, right? Naturally. And so there's this sort of fundamental relationship and connection that we have with the peers. And if you think about Western occultism, right, it's about groups of people getting together and doing group rituals, right, in its core, fundamentally. And it's about a group of people invocation of particular ideas. But then when you go to India, you're all on your own, and it's more like an evocative experience of what's within you just pouring out of you. And that's like what I'm hearing from you, is you started with an invocative experience of occultism with magic, and then you discovered within yourself mysticism, which is like already inside of you, wanting to pour out of you. Does that make sense?
I'm actually kind of thinking a little bit further back into my spiritual journey, and kind of like why I'm trying to think back the thing that started me off on all of this stuff. Because, growing up, I wasn't really, like, when I was like a kid, I wasn't really that spiritual. I mean, I love nature, but I was just kind of like your standard nerdy kid that liked to play video games a lot. Like, I didn't really think I was really that spiritual. But I think for me, what growing up was that I was both deeply terrified of going to hell, but I was also terrified of the atheist idea of there no being afterlife at all. I'm like, and this felt like these were the only two socially acceptable things to believe in. I'm like, and to me, they're both equally distressing and disturbing. And I can't live my life. So I think, I'll get into Buddhism. That'll be a nice middle ground, because at least there's reincarnation and all that. And I was like, kind of like into that for a while. But then I kind of realized, like, I'm not really into the whole reincarnation thing here. And I'm kind of like, I'm interested in, like, exploring these outer spaces. And these Buddhists are like, no, just focus on breath. I'm like, yeah, I like breath and relaxing, but I want to focus on this cool stuff, all this cool, weird alien shit. They're like, no, it's no big deal, but I really want to. And you're kind of like, you get from that, and like, then you start realizing there's stuff in like Buddhism that are kind of like you don't agree with, and you're like, wait a minute, and you're like, this is kind of a trap too. And then let's get into occultism, and then we'll figure something out there, and maybe I'll figure things out. Then you realize there's the pitfalls and the traps within the occult belief system. You start to feel all the limits of the imagination. It's like I'm trying to find the outer Zarfexes. I don't know what it is, but I keep running into all these different barriers, all these different things. And I realized, looking back, it's like all I ever really wanted to do with the spirituality is like escape from spirituality. All I want to do with religion is to escape from religion, dude, and using spirituality and magic to do it. But in a lot of ways, it's like, by looking at your story, it kind of like recontextualized what my spiritual journey was really about, when you kind of look at it, that meta perspective. Because looking back at what I was looking for was freedom for my imagination. And it's like, because atheism, like, there's certain things you're not allowed to believe in, magic, you're not allowed to do these certain things. And, that was limiting to my imagination. But then with atheism, it's like, there is no afterlife, and everything is just thoughts in your heads, that's also really limiting to my imagination. But then I think, like, what's beyond the oneness? And it's like Buddhists are like, you can't go there. That's the limit. And I'm like, hell no. So you keep going further and further. So in a lot of ways, it's like my spiritual journey has been about growing and expanding my imagination, and then getting frustrated when there's like something blocking my path. It's like there'll be somebody thinking that there's ultimate reality, and I'm like, no, I'm going to keep going further. I don't ever want to stop. So it's like in that relentless like pursuit to just keep pushing, even when people are telling me it's like cosmic, we already figured it out. We made it to Kether. Buddha figured it out. There's nowhere further to go. But there's this part of me, it's like, no, you got to keep going. You got to keep searching. There's still something missing. And I'm glad I kept going on that journey, man, because I found some really interesting things and a lot of really like great entities along the way, man. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, you're speaking about imagination, and that's quite interesting. Like I'm looking at this series of correspondences that I've mapped out here between mystical thought and occult thought, like side by side, and just looking at like how limitation is an imagination sitting in that little huddle, even though the one is a different octave of the other. So there's like a kind of a shift. I can't explain it in words, but imagine like red light shift or something. There's such a concept of like the one accelerates past the other one, even though it's on the same point. It's the next level of that, but like of that. So like to think of like the one embodies it. So the limitation embodies the imagination expressed as harmony. The harmony embodies the will expressed as an eternal state, which is what keeps the wheel turning. The eternal state embodies the desire that keeps the structure, the karmic structure, turning. The karmic structure embodies the sensation that maintains the foundation of matter. And like from the top down, the unity embodies the inspiration that becomes the potential. The potential embodies the intuition that becomes the form. The form embodies the memory and the vibration that becomes space. And the space is the substance of the limitation. So like interesting how you're talking about imagination and limitation, and they're like, I think like the way to activate imagination, that's like why I sort of share this little idea here. The way to activate imagination, I'd like to see what you think about this, Cosmic. The way to activate imagination is to go deeper into the limitation. What do you think about that?
No, I think you're onto something. Absolutely, like, because I think that by testing your limitations and because it's not, there's no fun in being transgressive if there are no boundaries to break. It's like, I want to break something, man. That's the fun of it. It's like having a challenge and getting past it. I mean, a lot of it feels like, a lot of the Zarfexology stuff and getting through these Zerfikes, it feels like a video game, and that you're going through different levels and there's different like puzzles and challenges, and you have to kind of like, it's like I have to debate like every religion and point of view simultaneously in my head. It's between both the religious people and the existentialist nihilist people, and like forming a synthesis between all of it. And it's like, and it seems like, and it was like, by saying everything is organic, it's just like it answered all the philosophical questions pretty much. Like that was something I was like thinking about the other day, like in terms of like philosophy, like, like Christians and atheists, they'll always have these, these debates about like, ethics and morality and how things should be with God or without God. But I realized that the reason that they have all these moral arguments and why there is debate is because they define the universe as a machine. And when you define the universe as this dead machine, then you have to come up with all this philosophical arguments as to why the machine is somehow loving and compassionate, right? that somehow that this dead soulless machine has a soul. It's like, okay, the machine doesn't have a soul, but we're going to come up with a philosophical argument as to why it has a soul. But if everything is organic, you don't have to do any of that stuff. It's already implicitly there. And that's that childlike understanding that we have before adults try to like explain everything, you know? And I think it's important to learn to be able to how to get back to that, like that's what I'm very fascinated with the word like primordial and primordial. I think like, you know, not in the sense of like, you know, like the religious sense where there's like, you know, a white light coming at the sense of, you know, I'm thinking like dinosaurs. I'm thinking like Cthulhu monsters and tentacles and weird, strange alien things and being part of that primordial strangeness. You know, it's an interesting thing too. Like as a kid, I was also definitely very like strange, and I was kind of like, you know, like I was kind of like physically disgusting in the sense I would do things like pick my nose a lot, and that grossed out a lot of the other kids, which would make me call me gross and disgusting and not want to touch me, and that definitely messed me up psychologically, you know, and emotionally, and definitely it's been a duffel thing. But I think from that, it was like some people, I think they try to come up with this pristine identity. But there was a part of me that the one thing that helped me get through that growing up is that I kind of embraced the role of being weird and freakish. You know, you take that strangeness and you wear it like a badge of honor. Like you're weird and like you freak people out and you scare them and you're like, hell yeah, dude. Like I'm blowing their minds, man. And you learn to take power in that shit. And it's, you know, that's an important thing, you know? So, and with limitations, the other thing too is like, you know, if you can imagine like anything that you want, there's no real challenge to that. And it just basically becomes like a sandbox game. But limitations, it's always like, ooh, there's a new puzzle to think. So, you know, the thing to me, like when it comes to like what I hope for, like in my afterlife and, you know, what I hope to do when I'm done with this physical incarnation, you know, my best case scenario is that I basically go back to live with the Fae out there in the outer Zarfexes, and that I continue to keep exploring the universe and keep exploring things. Like my hope is that when I die, that I continue the exploration and the learning and the exploring. You know, that's why I never really liked the whole like Christian idea of heaven, man. Because like the idea that God is going to explain everything and that everything is going to be solved, all the mysteries are revealed. It's like, to me, heaven is not a world where there are no more mysteries left. To me, mystery is what gives me a sense of meaning. Mystery, because think about it, mystery is the thing that gives you an incentive to go out and look and explore and solve the mystery. You know, and I think that's also the difference between mystery and nihilism, because nihilism is also something that, you know, it seems like if there's nothing new under the sun, life has no meaning. There's nothing left to explore. There's nothing left to inquire, you know? But a mystery is like a tempting woman that demands you explore it. It's something about it. Mystery has an inviting quality that demands that you explore it, to understand it, to unlock its puzzles and its riddles. And that mystery is what gives life meaning. So my hope, to me, you know, heaven is knowing that that mystery is still alive and well, and that there's still more things for me to explore, more realms to discover, more thresholds and boundaries to find. And I find a lot of these afterlife concepts so depressing because there's this sense of finality to them, to the sense of, well, that's it. Everything's done. The show is over. You know, everything is perfect. There's nothing left to do. But I'm just saying, like, you know, hey, maybe the game is beaten, but I got some, you know, bonus content, some downloadable content after, you know, some secret levels after you've beaten the main game, so to speak. So, you know, that's kind of how I hope to see the other side. I don't know. I don't know if other people feel the same way. Maybe they do.
Hey, brother Indy, how you doing? I was worried about you. It's like Indy wasn't here for a long time. I was like, dude, what has happened to Indy? But he's good. He's here. He's all good.
Yeah, I was tending to my plants, but I was listening in.
Nice.
Yeah, I've heard
Nice.
that on the other side, people that have gone there get a little disenchanted because they're passed down to the ones who are able to come back. In this example that I'm talking about, there was a girl who was in a coma who spoke to her father who had passed on. And he related to her that it's all kind of all light and love there. And so there's like really no contrast that much. And things get to be like kind of like too simplified and like too effortless, and like there's no challenges, there's no mistakes. It's like gets to be drearily divine, where it's like overly predetermined to a degree. Like things aren't going to be exciting, and like there's not going to be bumps in the road and like challenges along the way to find blessings in disguise. So people have related that the other side gives a yearning to return back here to the chaos and to the darkness, to be able to transmute it and to come out on top in the battle of it all and fight through it and wrestle with it. And that on the other side, that when they see everything revealed, it takes away the mystery, it takes away the wonder and the determination to find the other side, to be able to find what's unseen. And that can be disenchanting for some on the other side, apparently. So that kind of paralleled with what you were saying, Cosmic.
Yeah, totally, man. And that just kind of, and what you said basically just kind of like reconfirms all my theories about Zarfexes and Zerfixes and all that stuff.
I think there is no end to mystery. Like, I mean, I can't speak about, well, I can remember some pieces in other existences, and there's still mystery. It's different, but there's still so much more out there. Like there's still so much more out there, and there's still so much more and so much more and so much more and so much more. It's like we're expanding, growing into deeper understanding. I don't think it ever ends. I don't think it ever can end. I don't think like one can ever get full. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
This is no end to how much what we can grow. It's like martial arts. I'll use that as a metaphor. Like in the beginning, the mystery is the techniques, right? Then after that, the mystery is aligning the correct alignment between the stance and the techniques. Then the mystery is the alignment between the stance and the techniques and the fluidity of the flowing. Then once that fluidity, the stance and the techniques, then the mystery becomes like the refinement of the micro stances within each, the micro structures within each technique. And the more one goes into those micro structures, the more one, and so like, it's just, and like my Shihan would explain to me, like he's still learning. I'd be like, oh wow, like you've been doing this for like 50 years and you're still learning. Holy crap, you know, like, or you know, whatever, however long he had been doing it for, then must be like 45 years of training or 40 years. And he was like, he's still learning to refine his technique. And like it was like, if that becomes your mission, it will never end, you know. And so yeah, but I mean that's a really interesting concept, like this woman saying this. I think like the idea of growth is just like there's no end to the Zarfexes, are there, Cosmic? You pop out of one and you come to the next. You pop out of that and isn't it an endless, almost I don't want to use the word infinite because I'm not sure I fully understand what infinite is, but
You got
it's close to infinite.
That's why I use the word ozozo instead. It's a better term to describe it. Because I figure if we're going to describe what's beyond infinity, why am I going to use a word that exists in the English language? You know, that's what I go with, ozozo.
Is Zozo. Yeah, man. These are all really interesting conversations. I noticed we've been going for a good 4 hours and 22 minutes. And Indigo is trying to get my attention there. She's like rolling around on the floor here next to me. Now she's coming to me. Now she's here. Okay. Do you need daddy's attention, my big girl? She's my golden retriever. That Indigo? Is that a Bindigo? That's a daddy's girl, Abuela. She's daddy's big girl. Yes. I think they want to go outside for pee-pees and all of that business. Oh, now I've got little Henry here. Next thing I'm going to have Ori and I'm going to have the whole crew like overwhelming me. the dog family. But yeah, I mean, it's been an absolutely scintillating, great, enjoyable conversation. And I've got something to look forward to. I just realized I'm going to watch the second half of Dune, the new Dune. I haven't watched the new Dune. I started watching it. And I was like, oh, okay. The new Dune. Yeah. I must admit, I went in going, I don't think you guys are going to beat the old Dune. That was my attitude going in. And so far, I haven't been that impressed. I mean, it's not bad, right? But like the old Dunes, like I was saying to my girlfriend, like from what I've seen so far, the old Dune had that, like the film had that real like ambiance of like the darkness, right? Behind these different races going to like steal the spice, take the spice and enslave every planet they go to, you know, whether they're the Arconians or the Arcades or, you know, whichever group they were all working for the Emperor and the Emperor just wanted the spice. But anyway, that's something to for me to look forward to. I just remembered. Oh, Dune. That's going to be fun. But yeah, it's been an absolutely scintillating conversation. Dear Cosmic, dear Indy, and dear Toby, Shinobi, Shinobi One Kenobi. I love that name. But it's, I think like I've said everything I need to say. Do you guys have any more you want to throw on the table, Indy or and Cosmic?
Not really. I think I'm pretty good.
I think I'm good. There was something I was trying to think of, but it's evading me right now. Something about Shinobi was saying about how the black light is the same as the black sun. Oh, what I was trying to say was, you asked earlier, Franklin, like if there's black light, like what's the source of that? And so I was thinking at the time, but I never got around to replying. According to my my integration theory of quantum physics and particle physics, that's explained. What I've seen the universe to be composed of is that there is a source mind, primordial source mind, that is embodied by the ether. But there are other forms that are unseen that lead up to the ether, the progression to return to ether. And those forms are dark matter and dark light. And the dark light ultimately turns back to ether. In my understanding, that matter and energy, which includes light, visible light, and other unseen electromagnetic frequencies that can be determined with different instruments. Those different forms are bundled ether that is unraveling, and as it unravels and sheds layers, those layers that are shedded off of the unbundling ether, which we refer to atoms as atoms and molecules, those layers that shed are the energies. that we sometimes see as visible light, which are then engulfed by the event horizons of the black holes at the galactic centers. And then from the poles of those black holes are emitted the dark matter streams, as like kind of two trees, like a tree with roots going down and the branches going up. And then it expands from there. And as it expands back into the dark light. And the dark light kind of starts to like permeate beyond the branches of the tree and the roots and like kind of fills the space and goes even to more expansive directions. And so that'd be like kind of like the prima materia. It's like the ubiquitous stuff that's always there that you can use and molds things, and it influences the matter and the energy. It's like the unseen, like source, closer to source material that's like ubiquitous for us. That was explained in like Hermeticism as being like the unseen, primordial, chaotic substance that's everywhere. And it can be molded or forged into manifestations of the material and the light when we can work with it. But ultimately that dark light completely unbinds and just returns back to becoming more ether, and which causes expansion of the cosmos. So basically what it all comes down to is that it's kind of like an integration of like a toroidal field that of the source mind that kind of comes in and then comes out and becomes more and then returns back into unifying and then goes back into expansion. And basically what's happening there is that everything is made of one, but then it takes on different forms. It goes into inversions and then is then transformed and transmuted into expansion.
Yeah, man. You know, I was just um trying to share the idea that the black light isn't a term that is usually used in Western occultism. It's a specific Sufi thing, and but it actually they draw a big distinction between that and the radiances, and then that it's not specifically a light. It's more like the consciousness sees radiance in all. Does that make sense? The consciousness sees the radiance within all things, and that even the darkness is radiance, as opposed to seeing the specific radiances of the black sun, because the black sun's got a spectrum coming out of it in the same way that the sun that we know has got a spectrum coming out of it, which is an interesting concept. But I think there must be a fundamental association which is like outside of our realm of linear association, if that makes sense. Like a very abstract concept, which you can't really even necessarily put into a cognizant frame to be able to put into words. Like, which is an interesting idea, really. You know, that going beyond liminal thought. What a concept, going beyond liminal thought. But yeah, man, it's been a total hoot. It's been a totally lovely conversation. And Howard, right, as we're slowing down, we're cranking up again. Gotcha. That's awesome, to say the least. Back at you, Tommy. You guys are having a cool conversation here. Salty, Seabirdie, Tom Rue, Big Love, Lucky Leak, D Love, and everybody else. Tom Rue, Howard. Yeah, man, Indy coming in with the heat. Ozozo self-generative? That's an interesting question. Is Ozozo self-generative? Well, it's more fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't even know
Most-
how to answer that question. I guess you could say in a sense it is self-generative, but in what way? Because we're talking about non-linear time fields of non-beginning, non-ending. Just I don't even know where we exist. It's like you don't know where you exist. The thing is, when you like go deep and meditate deep into Ozozo, you start to realize you don't. It's like you find the center of the universe, but you don't know where the center of the universe is in like relation to this other outer thing. It's like, where do we even exist in relation to like what? It's like it's really like mind blowing. You know, it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to actually like go through like a visualization like exercise in your mind just to like conceptualize it. And one of the things I realized is what it does is it's like the whole concept of surfaxes and bubbles is that in order to understand there, you know what it is? In order to understand that there are surfaxes outside of your bubble, you have to deal with the pain of popping your bubble. And by stretching your mind outward into Ozozo, you eventually pop the bubble, which gives you the realization that there are bubbles outside of your own.
Yeah, man. Bubbles. All the bubbles gonna have to burst at some point. Well, it's been an absolute honor, Cosmic, Indie, and Shinobi, and all of you beautiful people in the chat. I hope you guys are gonna have an absolutely awesome weekend and that you're enjoying the beginning of your season, be it summer or winter. Summer if you're in the north, winter if you're in the south. I think we can't have this conversation without giving an ode to Chris Cornell. Chris Cornell, wow, wow, wow. Black old sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? Black old sun, won't you come? Won't you come? Got to think about old Chris. He put that into such a beautiful context that he made us all think about it, didn't he?
I like the mellotron on that song. Soundgarden is like one of my like favorite all-time bands. Like I think I'm one of the rare people. I think Super Unknown is better than Nevermind. Like that's where I'm at with Soundgarden. Like they really like, I don't know, they're just more psychedelic. I love Nirvana, but I felt like Soundgarden was always more complex and psychedelic sounding than they were. They're more introspective, which I related to more.
Chris Cornell is just bloody amazing. He must have been one of the best singers ever.
You know
He
what's
had the
crazy
most
about Chris Cornell,
incredible
man?
range.
When I first heard Soundgarden, I was convinced the band had two different vocalists. When I first heard it as a kid, I thought there was like the
Exactly.
loud guy and the soft guy, and they're like, holy shit, they're the same singer. What the hell?
Yeah, that he was amazing. He was really, I think, like Queen is celebrated as having an amazing voice, and Queen did have a pretty powerful and incredible operatic range or whatever. But I think Chris Cornell has got to go down in history as probably one of the best vocalists with the greatest range
You know what I
of
think my
vocal
favorite?
capacity out of
I was
all
thinking about
rock
Soundgarden.
singers.
Like, you know what? My favorite, I think actually Like Suicide is one of my favorite songs. About she lived like a mother, but she flies so sweetly. She lived like a mother, but she fly just like suicide. And then Kim Thale with his like guitar solo, man. That's God's so good, dude. They don't make music like that anymore, man. Fuck.
What was the band he was in after Soundgarden? They were also pretty.
I never got into
Audioslave.
Audioslave.
They weren't bad. They were good as well.
Yeah, but they didn't have the same like dark, like kind of like gothic vibe that Soundgarden had. Audioslave was a little different. Of course, the last album was a little more like country-ish, like Down on the Upside, which had some good songs in there too. But Super Unknown, I think, is my all-time favorite. Just like every song on that album is just like memorable.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What was one of my favorite tracks? I can't think of it right now. I sing it quite a lot, actually. It comes up and I have to listen to it every once in a while. What is it? I don't know if it's from that album. It might be from one of the other, from the second album, third album. How many did they do? They did 3, didn't they?
Well, there's 3 that were like mainstream, but there were 3 before that. Like they had like 6 albums actually, but the
6
ones that
albums.
most people like, Bad Moto Finger is album number 4, technically. So then there's 3 more before that, but I think Bad Moto Finger is when they got like mainstream and big. But they had 3 albums before that.
Those are the ones that I knew, because I didn't listen to, like, I'm talking about when I was young. So that's like, you know, that's 90s, early 90s, like 1990, 1991, 92, 93.
Yeah, Bad Boat Finger was 91. I think the other 3 albums were like in the late 80s, like 89 and before that.
Okay.
They started in like 87, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I was probably only listening to them in like 89, 90, 91, 90. So that's interesting. I must go and take a look. There's probably a lot I haven't heard. But there's just so many. You're right. There's so many amazing tracks. What is the one I'm thinking about? It's about who I am. It's the idea of who I am. To be yourself is all that you can be. That's Soundgarden, isn't it?
I don't know.
To be yourself is all that you can be. Or is that Audio Slave? Was that their first album, or was that the last album?
I think that might be.
That was the first album of Audio Slave.
That song
track
feels like it's like a
captured me.
2000 song, not a 90s song.
That is a later one. I think it's 99. Anyway, it's decades ago. It's been a while. But anyway, it's been an absolute honor and a ball. And I hope you all are going to have a ball and enjoy your ball. The big ball, the ball of wax, the ball of space, the ball of time, the ball. Don't forget to dance. Always you have to dance at the ball. Life is a ball. You're living in a ball, and you got to have a ball. And in order to have a ball, you got to dance under the ball. And yeah, life is a ball dance. Big love and big blessings to all of you. Take it easy. Keep smiling and keep jiving, and keep your positive goals ahead of you. And remember the challenges that brought you to where you are, and find that harmony and balance between the two. Om Namah Shivaya. Big love, big blessings.
Blessed be.
All right, it's been a good roundtable, guys.